Welcome to the Self Reliant Living Show, where we talk all about a self-reliant lifestyle to save money, live greener, eat healthier, and be prepared for anything so you can take care of the ones you love in good times and bad. I'm your host, Jennifer Osich, a homeschooling mom of 3 boys. I'm the author of the Preparedness Planner series, and my husband and I are the lead teachers of Self Reliant School, a website dedicated to giving you the skills and confidence to take care of yourself and your community. Be sure to stop by and pick up your free videos from inside Self Reliant School that will get you started growing, cooking, and preserving your own food today. You can pick these up at selfreliantschool.com/free. Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Self Reliant Living Show. Hi, Barbara. Oh, Kansas and sunny. Okay, yeah, I love Kansas. And so that's great that it's sunny there. Okay, I love talking to people, so it's really hard for me to say, okay, now I have to do this. But yeah, thank you guys for coming in and chatting with me. All right, now I'm actually going to start. Okay, so welcome to the Self Reliant Living Show. Okay, so today we're going to talk about something really, really important, and that is how to preserve the season. And I thought that this would be a really great topic to talk about this time of year because it's kind of the end of the summer. If you're watching the replay, we're recording this the first day of September, actually. So we are at the end of the summer. It's about to be Labor Day weekend and all of that. And the canning season, preserving season, and all of that is sort of winding down. But I am going to, convince you, hopefully, that it really shouldn't wind down completely. And let's talk about that for a little bit and how to preserve the season, because there are a lot of different things that grow throughout the year, and I want to talk to you about growing them and then also finding them and then also preserving them so that you can eat more locally and with more freshness and all of that. So why is it important to know where your food comes from? Well, the biggest one is so that you can eat locally. And one of the biggest things that you can do to know where your food comes from is to get to know the farmers that grow your food. And I know that this may seem alien to some of us because you go to the grocery store and you might get to know the people at the grocery store, but the farmer, they're not there, right? And that's true, they're not. So the thing is that you may have to go to the farmer. You may have to find a farmer somewhere, and we'll talk about some ways to do that. But you can also get to know some of the people at your grocery store, and if they are interested in their customers, they will let you know some information about where your food comes from. And I know that I've tried to make some relationships with where the stores I shop at, and I have been able to get some information. So that even though it may seem like an upward battle in terms of talking to the people at your supermarket, they really are there to help you. So that's not something to just kind of roll your eyes at and then abandon. It's something to actually try. So so it is important to know, like I said, where your food comes from so that you can eat locally. And we'll get into more reasons to eat locally in a second. But right now I just want to focus on the reasons that it's important to know where your food comes from. Okay, and then also if you do know where your food comes from and hopefully are going to eat locally, you're going to reduce your carbon footprint. If you're at least going to know what that is. And if you know what it is, hopefully you'll want to reduce it somewhat. Okay, so, and then of course the other reason is that you care about the food that you eat and the food that you're feeding your family. So that is, those are some of the really important reasons to know where your food comes from. So, why is it important to eat and preserve locally? So not only do I think it's important to eat locally, but I think it's important to preserve locally. And we'll get into that in just a minute. But some of the reasons why I feel like that this is important is that if you are eating locally, then your food has more flavor and taste. Because if you think about it, if you're eating locally, your food doesn't have to sit in a warehouse somewhere and just kind of wait on shipping. I know in some warehouses they put chemicals and things like that on especially produce to keep them fresh. So if you're eating locally, you're eliminating a lot of those things, which is really beneficial because you want to eat the most nutritious, freshest food possible. Okay, so and that leads me into my next reason, and that is that local food is indeed more nutritious. So if you are, you're wanting to eat food that has the most nutrition in it, just because you care about what you put in your body, but maybe you have some health issues as well. So if there is a shorter storage life, then you're going to have more nutritious food because your food is not going to just be sitting around and basically deteriorating or decaying or rotting. So that is a big reason. So then also, if you buy food locally, you are supporting your local economy. So that's really important in terms of, just where you live and supporting your community. And I feel like that is a really important reason to support your farmers that are local to you. Then also, you are encouraging a safer food supply. So in other words, the less people that your food has to go through, the less people who touch your food, so to speak, the more healthy and less of a safety issue there is with your food. So that, that's going to lead to a healthier food supply, a safer food supply, because we all have seen in the news and newspapers about, there's E. coli here, and there's problems with salmonella here, and there's various other bacteria as well. Well, like I said, if your food has a shorter time from the time that it comes from the ground or farm to you, then you're going to eliminate a lot of those safety concerns. Then also, you're going to have less waste because more than likely you'll have less packaging as well, but you're going to have less waste in terms of the fuel that's spent to get your food where you are. And then you have a bunch of, like I said, food is usually stored in warehouses and whatnot, and so there's different things that the warehouse has to do to keep that food as fresh as possible for you. So there would be less waste products from that whole setup. And then also, this is something to think about because this is not something that is usually talked about when we're talking about eating locally, but that is that if you do eat locally, then you are preserving farmland around you and also the water sources that go with it. So there's not development coming in and saying, okay, well, we're going to develop this land for something else. If there's a farm there, then that's less likely to happen. So I feel like that's something that's a benefit that's usually not talked about when you're talking about eating locally. So, and here's another one that's not talked about very much, and that is that when you eat locally, you are preserving different varieties of the food that's produced in your area. And this is especially true with like fruits and vegetables because there are different varieties. Let's just take a tomato, for example. There's different varieties of tomatoes. Well, if we're all getting our food source from one place, then the different varieties, they're not going to be offered. They're just going to offer you 2 or 3 different kinds of tomatoes or varieties of tomatoes, and then that's going to be it. They would maybe pick those varieties for some different reasons, maybe easy to grow where their farms are or whatever. I mean, there's a ton of different things that they could base that information on, but if you are growing those things locally, then whatever grows best in your region will probably be preserved. So that is a different reason, to maintain genetic diversity with seeds and whatnot. So that's something that's not usually talked about either, but that is a benefit of eating locally. So you guys, let me know, do you go to farmers markets? Do you know any of the farmers that produce your food? or are you basically just shopping at the grocery store? Either way, I'd love to know if you would tell me in the comments. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about the difference. Well, I mean, the difference when we're talking about eating locally, of course, the closest that you can get, like your own backyard, that's great. Then, you know, we're not all going to be able to grow everything. So if you know farmers in your area, that's even better. But not, you know, not all of us do. And I'm not here to criticize anybody, because I want people to start just thinking about this subject. And if you don't do that currently, maybe after listening to this, that it would encourage you to ask some questions and figure out, you know, where does your food come from? So if you're just a grocery store shopper, there's no judgment. That's great. I shop at the grocery store. So so let me know where you do shop. That would be great if you could tell me in the comments. And so if you don't have a farmer's market, or if you don't have a garden, the thing is that, now this is not true with organic food, but if you're just going to the grocery store, you want to try and get food that is grown in the US. And that is because we have farming regulations here that other countries don't. We do have damaged and contaminated soil in this country. I'm not going to say, oh, well, we don't. But the thing is that other countries have damaged and contaminated soil, and there's not the effort that there is here to fix it. Now, there may be in some European countries, and I'm not talking about some of those. I'm talking about basically countries in Asia and South America, because there's not always an effort to try and amend damaged soil or contaminated soil. So if you're not buying organic, then it might be useful for you to look and make sure that at least you're buying US grown. And then of course there's the storage conditions, because if you're buying something from overseas, then you know that food has gone through different storage conditions and longer storage conditions. Okay, so how do you do this? How do you start this? Because it's overwhelming. And if you're shopping at the grocery store and you don't have a garden, and you know you're on a budget and you're trying to do the best you can for your family, but without breaking the bank, how the heck do you start doing this? I mean, you could go and you could make a proclamation and say, well, I'm only going to eat locally, and if it's not grown locally, I'm not going to eat it. But the thing is that, you know, that sounds great, but in practice, that might be a little difficult, especially if you're not used to doing it. And I am all for setting people up for success. So I feel like that is limiting yourself and doing it kind of fast, right? So that kind of sets the stage for failure, like I said, especially if you're not used to it. So I would submit a great way to start doing this is to pick something, maybe your favorite fruit, maybe your favorite vegetable, or maybe even your favorite meal, right? And then start preserving that one thing. So let's take, for example, blueberries. Okay, so blueberries come out usually in the early summer. So that might not be the best choice or example right now because it's September, right? But even so, say blueberries are your favorite thing to eat, or your favorite fruit. So what you could do is you could make plans and maybe learn how to preserve them when they come back in season. And so some of the things that you would have to plan for is, well, do I know how to preserve blueberries? Because there's different ways to preserve them. And then, you know, well, how do I do that? And then you would also need to think about budgeting for buying a lot of blueberries in the summer. So your budgeting would have to change a little bit. It's kind of like buying in bulk, because that is the season that blueberries would be ripe and fresh and grown in the U.S. Mainly. I don't want to say any blanket statements, because all of the grocery stores and the food chains is changing constantly. So when I'm talking here, I'm talking pretty generally in my own experience because all of this stuff changes really from day to day. Okay, so, but taking that example, say that you were concerned about this and you thought, okay, well, how am I going to do that? How am I going to eat and preserve things locally? I feel like that if you just take one or two things that you want to preserve and start eating locally, like say for a year, that you could do that, and then you could do it, like you writing in a journal, okay, well this year we did blueberries and say apples. And then next year you might tackle two more things. And then each time you come across apples, or it's apple season or blueberry season, then you plan to buy enough for the entire year. And what you do is you preserve them. So you've taken blueberries and you've made them a food that you only eat locally. I feel like that is such a better way to look at it, because then you don't take all the food away at once, and especially if it's in the middle of winter and you're going, well, what do I eat? There's nothing to eat, right? So if you do this in a step-by-step kind of method, I think you set yourself up for success. Okay, so some of the things that you need to know to start doing this are, you're gonna have to study up a little bit on gardening. And even if it's not your thing, and you don't have to have a garden, you just have to know a little bit about growing, that is. And so tell me in the comments if you have a garden, and then tell me if you also hate gardening. So tell me one way, whichever way it is, one way or the other, and so that I can get an idea of how many of you garden and how many of you don't really like it. But even if it's not your thing, even if you don't like going out there, getting your hands dirty and all of that, because I can relate. Some days I go out there and I'm like, oh, I just really don't feel like doing this and I don't want to get my hands dirty. You're going to have to know a little bit about how things are grown and what is in season where you are. Okay, so you also need to know how long your growing season is in your area. And then you need to know what foods are grown in your area, which foods do well. And if you have a garden, you probably already know that. But if you don't, you may have to do a little research. Then the other thing is that it's really beneficial to attend farmers markets and ask questions. And just like we talked about a second ago, it's also beneficial to ask questions at your grocery store. Even if you feel like you're not going to get any answers, I encourage you to do it anyway, and I encourage you to keep doing it, because different people at whatever store that you go to, sometimes they have different answers. I will throw that out there. But oftentimes, there may be somebody who's really not interested in helping you, but then the next time you go, you might find somebody who is really interested in helping you. So, it would be really beneficial for you to have a relationship with that person. And then also the farmers markets, to ask questions there, because they will have a lot of information there. So that is something that I really encourage you to do. Even if you just go and walk around and don't buy anything, just go and ask questions, and ask about when things come in season, when are the lowest prices for different varieties of produce. You may even want to ask about locally raised beef or pork, and that would be something that usually farmers and ranchers that do that, they just love to talk about it, so you probably get more information than you ever thought possible. Okay, so but before I go on too much further, I want to define local, right? Because what do I mean by local? Not just your garden, right? So I'm going to do this in kind of a different way, because like I said, doing it yourself is great, but it's just not always possible. So I'm going to put it in a best, better, acceptable, and not recommended type of order, so that you don't feel pressured to get the map out and say, well, I'm not going to buy anything within this amount of radius of my home, because that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, so when you buy local, the best thing to do is know, like I said, the farmer who grows the food or raises it. So buying from them directly is the best scenario. And if you can do that, that would be a great setup for you. And the thing is that you may be able to do that with some things, but you may not be able to do it with everything that you need. And that's fine. But just to know that that's really the best scenario. Okay, so another scenario would be that you buy regional. And what I mean by that is that maybe your state is famous for oranges. So I can think of 3 states that are famous kind of for their citrus. So if your state is, if that's something that's grown almost locally or statewide, at least regionally, then that is okay. It's not as good as having an apple tree or a citrus tree in your own backyard, but not all of us can do that because we live in different areas and we have different growing seasons or whatever. So if you can take advantage of regionally grown food, like here in Texas, we have grapefruit, and we have Texas grapefruit, and every year I take advantage of that. We have, most of the stores around here, they get truckloads in, and I really take advantage of Texas grown grapefruit because that is regional to me. Okay, so then we talked about acceptable, because we've got best, better, and then it's better to at least buy regionally, right? And then now we're going to talk about acceptable, and we talked about this a little bit, and that is buying from the U.S. So, and I am talking here about non-organic. So we'll get into organic and non-organic in a minute, but here I'm just talking in general. It could be organic and it could not be organic. Like I said, we'll talk about that in just a minute, but I'm just saying that if it's farmers markets, because a lot of times when you go to farmers markets, their food is grown organically, but it's not certified organic. And like I said, we'll get into that, but I just want to mention that this is something, I'm talking about food that's not labeled one way or the other, or that's grown conventionally. So that's basically what I'm talking about here. And then it's not recommended that you buy food or produce, especially from another country. Not saying that that's a sin if you do it, but I'm just saying that those are sort of the tiers in terms of best, better, acceptable, and not recommended. Now, organic, if you buy organic from a different country, that's a different story. And like I said, we'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, so I can see lots of gardens. That's great. And all the stuff that you guys grow in the garden, that's wonderful. Hey, Julie, how are you doing? Oh, yes, Mary, that's great. Tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, carrots, yum. Okay, so back to what I was talking about with the best, better, acceptable, not recommended. Now, a lot of times, not always, like I said, I'm trying to make generalized statements here because all of this information changes, like I said, almost daily. And it's also regional. You could have a different setup in your state or your region or whatever. So these are just some general guidelines. And so I'm hoping that by giving these to you that it will help you and encourage you to research more where you live. So many times, like I said, I talked about the grapefruit in Texas, and many times everywhere in grocery stores, what they'll do is they'll go and they will buy produce especially, and they will put it on sale that week as a loss leader. In other words, they'll actually take a loss on selling that. And how they get that, usually, not always, so don't, like I said, this is general, and it is something to inquire about. And that is what they will do is they will buy things that are cheaper because they're regional, because they're grown locally, and they're usually cheaper, especially when you buy them in bulk. And so that's something to definitely inquire about. I'm not saying that if it's a loss leader, then it's automatically grown regionally. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that sometimes that is what they do to save money. So definitely inquire about that when you see something on sale. You go in and ask them, well, where is this from? Or you can read the labels, and we'll talk about that too in just a second. Okay, so now we're going to talk about organic versus non-organic. And so tell me in the comments, do you normally buy organic, or do you buy non-organic, or do you buy from a farmer's market? Or do you just grow organic and not worry about any of it? Okay, so let me talk a little bit about organic, and I'm going to talk about some different kinds of organic. The first one would be my definition of organic, and this is how I grow food in my garden, and that is I grow it without pesticides and without artificial fertilizers in uncontaminated soil. And to me, that sounds like a fair definition of organic. Let me know in the comments if you think that that is a fair definition. That is not exactly what is meant when you are getting something that is USDA certified organic. Now, not to say that it's a bad product when you buy it, but it doesn't mean those things that I just talked about. Basically, this is what it means. It means that it's produced without their excluded methods. Okay, so that means that it's supposed to be non-GMO, and it doesn't have a few different other conditions that they lay out in their rules. We'll talk about GMOs in just a minute, so I'm just going to leave it there for a second. Okay, and then it's produced using their allowed substances. Well, the allowed substances, some of them are questionable. So let me just throw that out there. And then also, to be USDA certified organic, it's overseen by the government. So you would need to have a certificate to actually put a label on your food if you were going to sell it somewhere as being certified organic. So they have a broader definition of organic than I do. But I just want to let you guys know that, because I know some people, they don't realize that. They think organic means totally natural, and it doesn't in all cases. So it just depends on the farmer and all that. That's why it is so important to, if it's possible, to talk with the farmer to do that, because you could ask them these questions. You could ask them, how is this lettuce grown, and how is it harvested, and where is it kept, and those sorts of questions. Okay, so then when I say, okay, so this is what I mean when I say my definition of organic, then I explained what USDA certified organic means in the definition that of that, and then also non-organic or conventional means that it is usually grown using pesticides or herbicides. Now, I do want to say at this point that if you do go to a different farmers markets, and you talk to farmers, getting the USDA certified organic seal is time consuming and it's expensive. So you may find some farmers that go by my definition of organic, and they can't sell their food as USDA certified organic. So again, that's another reason to talk to the farmer. And oftentimes, like I said, they go above and beyond, but they're just not allowed to sell under that seal because they haven't gone through the government process to do that. So that is something to keep in mind. But if you find conventional produce, like in a grocery store, it usually comes from commercial farms that do use pesticides and herbicides. Okay, so let me talk about some items that you should try to buy organic. And I'm sure that you guys have heard these before, but I'm just going to go over them because we're talking about all this here. And these are the fruits and vegetables that really are not, they don't protect themselves very well from pesticides and herbicides, and so that you probably want to buy organic when you buy these. And I'm just going to go through them rather quickly, but you can go to the show notes, and this whole list will be there for you to look at and to take notes on if you would like to do that. So strawberries are one that you should buy organic. Apples, peaches, and nectarines. And if you do buy those conventionally, be sure to wash the skin, especially of peaches, because the pesticide gets on the skin and it's kind of fuzzy, it gets in there. So wash those with soap and water, veggie wash, everything. Celery, grapes, cherries, buy organic. Basically all your greens, your spinach, kale, collards, and that's kind of obvious because they're so fragile. Tomatoes, you want to buy organic. Your peppers, whether they're hot or they're sweet. Cucumbers, and then potatoes, you want to buy organic. And then also you want to buy your corn organic, not because of the pesticide factor, because the corn has kind of a covering on it, but because of the GMO factor. Because if you buy organic, you're not supposed to be getting GMOs. Now, I'll just pause right here and talk about that for a second. By definition, it is not supposed to be GMO. However, just because there's a definition out there doesn't mean that all corn is completely non-GMO, because of the way that corn is pollinated. And so nature is going to do its thing, and if there's GMO corn grown next to organic corn, then there's going to be some cross-pollination and whatnot. So buying organic corn is probably, or is the best, but just because it says organic and the definition of organic means that's not supposed to be GMO, that doesn't mean that is completely unequivocally not GMO. So I'm just letting you know about that. Okay, so here are some things that you can buy and you don't have to worry as much. And all of these things are based on pesticide residue, not anything else. So let me know in the comments which vegetables that you insist on buying organic and which you don't really care about. You're fine with buying them conventional. Because these are some things that are fine to buy conventional. And that's asparagus, avocados, cabbage, cantaloupe, carrots, cauliflower, eggplant, grapefruit, kiwi, onions, mango, mushrooms, papaya, pineapple, sweet peas, sweet potatoes, and watermelon. Okay, so those are the vegetables and fruits that don't have a high pesticide residue when you buy them conventionally. There is some, but it's not as high as the others. So if you're going to have to make a choice between buying, some of your produce organic and non-organic, then this is a great guideline to go by. Okay, so let's get into how to read your produce stickers and how you can know if you have organic produce or if you or the country of origin. And this is mainly in the grocery stores. It's not as much in the farmer's market, but let me just say right now that it depends on your farmer's market. I want to put this in here as a precaution because just because somebody is at a farmer's market doesn't mean they're the farmer. And I've had this happen to me a couple of times. This is another reason why it is a great thing to strike up a conversation with the people at the farmer's market, because it is it's the thing now, right, to shop at farmer's markets. So what some people have done is they have gone and talked to the farmer, or they have been able to get produce, fruits, vegetables wholesale. So somehow they have a connection to be able to do that. And what they'll do is they will go and buy whatever they think will sell, and they will set up at a farmer's market. And so they're not really the farmer, they're kind of a middleman, and they may not know how that food was grown. So that is another reason to talk to the people at the farmer's market and to really question them. I mean, you just have to, get out there. And I know that some of us don't like to make waves and we don't like to be confrontational and all of that stuff. But the thing about it is, if you are talking to a farmer that has brought their produce to this farmer's market, they are going to be more than happy to talk to you about how they grew it. And if they're not, just move right along, because that's a telltale sign, a red flag. Okay, so but if you're in the grocery store and it's not farmer's market season or whatever, and you need to be able to figure out whether you've got organic food or non-organic food, and then also you want to be able to tell the country of origin. Okay, so there's those little bitty stickers on produce. I know probably you've spent a lot of time taking them off when you're going to can something or when you're going to dehydrate something. I know I have. Okay, so, but actually those little stickers have a code. And if you're looking on that sticker and it begins with a 9, then it is organic. That's how the system is set up in the US. Then if it starts with a 3 or a 4, that means that it's grown conventionally. Then also on produce and vegetables, the grocery store is supposed to let you know the country of origin. And most of the time it's on these little stickers, if you can see those little stickers we have up there. Okay, so most of the time it's on those stickers, but sometimes, stickers won't stick to certain things. And it's supposed to be located near where you buy it. This doesn't always happen, but that's, that's the regulation that it's supposed to be there. So just know that. And if your store doesn't put that out there, then, that's maybe something to question as well. All right, so here's another thing. How do you know about grains like wheat and rice? And so, I see Lynn is asking a question. It is preferable that everything is organic, Lynn. I'm just saying that if you have to pick between, buying some foods that are organic or not organic, the list that I gave for okay to buy conventional is acceptable. They all the foods that are grown conventionally have some pesticide residue. Those just have less. So, because she is asking why aren't sweet potatoes necessary to be organic? Everything is preferable to be organic, but like I said, if you're having to make a choice, that's kind of a guideline to go by. Okay, so we were talking about the stickers, and then we were also talking about wheat and rice and how you're supposed to know where your grains come from. Well, let me just go and talk about something that was circulating a few years back, and that was that there was numbers on the barcode that will tell you the country of origin. And this is supposed to be on all foods, not just foods that are, raw foods, I guess, for lack of a better term, something that you can tell just came right from the plant, like wheat or rice or that sort of thing. But basically what that will do is that will just tell you the country where the barcode was issued. So let me give you an example. Say that you are trying to eat healthier and avoiding apples from China. Well, if you buy something, say you're buying some apple crisp from your favorite store, you're buying them packaged and you haven't made them, and but this is your favorite snack or whatever. Well, because those were packaged maybe in Mexico, but the apples actually came from China, they were actually grown in China, the barcode's going to say Mexico. So that's not really going to help you too much if you're trying to avoid apples from China. So even though that system exists, it's not really reliable. So I'm not really going to go into too much more detail about it because, like I said, it's really not reliable. So if you have read about that or have heard about that in the past, just know that there is a system that sort of tells you partially about some things, but like I said, it's not reliable and it's not going to tell you where your food was grown. Okay, so the thing to do is to call the company that produces the food, and so that will help you figure out if they're willing to tell you, because there's a lot of companies that they either, the person you talk to either doesn't know or they're really just not willing to tell you for whatever reason. And if that's the case, I would highly recommend just moving along and not purchasing that product. Okay, so now let's go on to talk about if somebody is telling you that where it's grown and it is a selling point for them, and they're saying, Washington apples or something like that, then that is a good sign. They're telling you where the apples were grown, and that is something that you want to look for in terms of knowing the country and the region of origin of your food. Okay, so having said that, you may be paying a little bit of a higher price today, let's say today, because there's those health bills down the line, because there is going to be a price, I feel, for this massively cheap food. So you really have to invest in your food. And that's not to say that, to pay millions of dollars for, to buy every single thing organic, but to really understand that you're either, you're going to pay for that cheap food down the line. So if you know the country of origin, and that's a selling point for the company that's selling the food, that is a good sign, and that's probably a company that you should do business with and buy their product. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about some sneaky things that companies will do. And we talked a little bit about this with the apple crisp, but there's more. Okay, so when something says that it's made in the U.S., it makes you kind of proud if you're from the States, and that's made in the U.S., and that's a good thing. It keeps jobs here and everything. But that does not mean, like I said, that the ingredients were grown here. So that's a very, very big sort of distinction. And then, like I said before, if you call the company and they don't want to tell you for whatever reason, then it's time to move on. So it's very important to look for product of rather than made in the U.S. So if it's a product of, and most organic food, especially the raw ingredients, like things like beans, rice, wheat, things like that, if you buy organic, they will tell you the country of origin. And if it is organic, it does have to meet the U.S. organic certified regulations. So even if it was grown in a different country, then they still have to meet those standards. And so I still would be okay with that, even though it was grown in a different country. Now, having said that, still, like I said, not all of the soil and all of that kind of stuff is regulated like it is in the U.S. So just, like I said, you have to ask questions. Okay, so let me go over a few things that are common and are grown seasonally, and so you will just get an idea. Like I said, if you want to start preserving and you just want to do one or two things maybe this winter, I want to go over a few things that are in season in the winter. Like I said, this is going to be at the show notes, so if I go a little bit fast, because we're going on an hour again, I always try and keep it under 30 minutes, but it just never happens. It never happens because I like to talk too much. Okay, so let me go through these quickly so that you can get an idea of some things that you can start maybe preserving this winter, and then I'm also going to go over some fruits that are in season in the summer, so that you know not to look for those in the winter. Okay, so winter fruits include apples, bananas, clementines, cranberries, kiwis, lemons, oranges, passion fruit, pears, pomegranates, rhubarb, oranges, tangerines, and some grapes. Okay, so those are some of the fruits that you could look for this winter, and maybe start with one or two and preserving those so you will have them all throughout the spring and summer, so until it's time for them to come back into season next year. Okay, so the things that you would look for in the summer are apricots, blackberries, actually all kinds of berries, cantaloupes, cherries, currants, figs, grapes, guava, honeydew, melon, lime, mango, papaya, peach, plums, and then, like I said, raspberries, strawberries, all kinds of berries, and then watermelon in the summer. So if you wanted to go ahead and aim for preserving one or two of those maybe next year, and you wanted to save a little bit in advance to buy those, a lot of those to preserve, then it would be a great time to start doing that now. Okay, so one final thought that I want to leave you with here today is that when you are doing this, I would really encourage you not to make those blanket statements saying, 100% I'm only going to eat locally and I'm never going to eat anything that doesn't come from a 100-mile radius or 5-mile radius of my home. I really encourage you not to make those sort of statements, and that rather to adopt like an 80-20 rule, that it's your goal to maybe eat 80% locally and then let that 20% be made up of different foods from wherever, because I feel like that is a more sustainable lifestyle, and that is something that we can aim for and hopefully get really close to that, and not even having that written in stone. If 1 month you do 80-30 or not 70-30, can't do math, 70-30 or whatever, that's fine too, but just aiming to have more of your food grown locally than not, I think is a great way to look at it and a great place to start. And that doesn't make it, so overwhelming. Okay, so a couple of things before I let you go that I want to mention is that if you have a CSA in your area, that might be something that you check out. That's community supported agriculture. And you can look that up as to the details of what those are, but that's maybe something you might want to talk to a farmer when you're talking to them at the farmer's market about. And then also a food co-op, that's another thing you might want to look up. That is where the members of a co-op get food wholesale, and that might be something that you might want to look up as well. And then also a herd share, and that is where you actually own some of the goats or the cows, and you pay the dairy farmer to keep them and to milk them and to do all of that, and then you get part of the milk that is made from that. So, or that's produced from that, I should say. So those are some things to look up if you're interested in taking it to the next step. That would be some things that would be a great thing to talk to, like I said, the farmer at your farmer's market. Okay, so if you're just coming in the middle of this, I want to introduce myself again. My name is Jennifer, and I'm from Self Reliant School. I also want to let you know, again, before I can let you go, because I'm going to let you go, I promise, right? It's going on an hour, that we have a Labor Day sale at Self Reliant School, and we have 50% off of all of our planners. We have a gardening planner, so that's 50% off of that. And then we also have a preparedness planner that lets you take stock of all of the things in your pantry. So that would be great if you are into preserving different things. And if you go to selfreliantschool.com/planners, you can see all of those there. And you, like I said, will get 50% off using the coupon code LABOR50. And that sale is through Labor Day, so through Monday. And so, with that, I want to say, remember that being self-reliant is not just about you or being selfish. It's about you taking care of yourself so you can take care of the ones that you love. Take care until we talk again. I'm so glad you could join me today. Here's what to do next. Head over to selfreliantlife.tv to pick up the show notes for this episode and to watch replays of older episodes. To go directly to the show notes for this episode, go to selfreliantlife.tv and then, without a space, type a / and then the number of today's episode. You can watch this show live every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, live on Facebook or the Periscope app. Don't forget to stop by selfreliantschool.com/free to get your free Self-Reliant School videos that will help you get started living a self-reliant life. Also, if you're listening to this show as a podcast and you've liked what you've heard today, please subscribe through Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast app. If you're on a mobile device, just search for the Self Reliant Living Show. If you're on a laptop or desktop, just go to selfreliantlife.tv/iTunes. And while you're there, please leave a review. I love to hear from you. You leaving feedback makes it easier for others that are interested in living a self-reliant life to find my podcast. Take care until we talk again.